My mother decided that a piano would be a very good piece of furniture in the house, probably a status symbol. And I came in and I saw the piano. And as soon as I saw it, it was sort of like, the globe shining, the obelisk or something.
Yeah.
And I'm 3 years old and I walked over and I sort of put my hands on the piano and then I touched the keys and I said, oh, I've done this before. And I just started playing.
Hello, and thank you so much for listening to this episode of Piano Whisperer. I am your host, Ben Klinger, and we have a super interesting episode today. Before we begin, I want to thank Classic Pianos for making all of these episodes possible. As always, I'd like to begin with a bio of our guest. Peter Manning Robinson is an LA-based pianist, Emmy award-winning and multi-BMI award-winning composer, inventor of the Refractor Piano, and whose music bridges innovation and cinematic scope with deep emotional depth. He's also an accomplished vegan chef. Born in Chicago and raised on the West Coast, Robinson began playing piano at age 3 and was performing professionally by 12. His musical foundations, rooted in classical structure and jazz improvisation, were refined through formal studies at USC and Berklee College of Music, and through performances with jazz luminaries including Ernie Watts, Phil Woods, and Freddie Hubbard. Robinson's career spans film, television, orchestral, and live performance. His scores have earned an Emmy Award for KABC's Above and Below and 5 BMI Music Awards for his work on the highly successful police drama Without a Trace. His orchestral works have been recorded by members of the London Philharmonic, the Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra, and Musica Nova. In his early 20s, after developing severe tendonitis and being told he would never perform live again, he underwent a radical physical and artistic retraining process under Phil Cohen of Concordia University's Leonardo Project, unlearning traditional piano technique and emerging with an entirely new physical and musical language. That journey ultimately led to the invention of the Refractor Piano, a radically reimagined acoustic piano that allows Robinson to create what he calls refracted music. Live, fully acoustic performances with no pre-recorded tracks, MIDI instruments, or external sounds. Since debuting the Refractor Piano in 2016 at Bergamot Station in Santa Monica, Robinson has presented acclaimed performances at venues including the Vortex Dome and the Museum of Modern Art in downtown LA. In 2021, he and longtime artistic collaborator and video director Klaus Hoch founded Owl Walk Records, an innovative, artist-friendly musical label. While much of Robinson's recent work is centered on the Refractor Piano, his latest neoclassical album, Excursions, marks a powerful return to solo acoustic piano. Compiled over a 3-year period, Excursions is a deeply personal collection of compositions that navigate grief, heartbreak, resilience, and luminous hope. Written during a time shaped by global upheaval and personal loss, the album traces an emotional arc from despair and fracture through struggle, renewal, and joy. Excursions affirms Peter's belief that instrumental music can evoke images and emotions beyond language. As he puts it, this is the work I am most proud of. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest, Peter Manning Robinson. Peter, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me.
Ben, thank you. It's my pleasure.
So glad you're here. There is a lot to discuss on this episode. I realize your heart may identify more with the present, but I think it will mean a lot to our listeners if we can chat some about your early years to provide some context. I think the whole journey is important. Does that work for you?
Of course. Absolutely.
Okay.
And I want to say one thing.
Sure.
At the end of the bio, you said that my current work is the work I'm most proud of. That's because anything I'm working right now becomes the thing I'm most proud of.
Well,
I can't even remember what I did yesterday, but today it was, oh, well, that was kind of interesting. Oh, that's pretty good. So that's I try to stay as much in the present.
I'm getting that. Okay, that sounds good. Um, so I always like to ask people in the beginning how they began playing. But in an interview you did with Medium.com, I read that you started playing at the age of 3, and that when you first sat down, you said to yourself, I've done this before. So can you elaborate a little more on that? How did it feel? Familiar? And what happened next?
Sure. So my mother decided that a piano would be a very good piece of furniture in the house, probably a status symbol. And I came in and I saw the piano. And as soon as I saw it, it was sort of like, the globe shining, the obelisk or something.
Yeah.
And I'm 3 years old and I walked over and I sort of put my hands on the piano and then I touched the keys and I said, oh, I've done this before. And I just started playing and I was playing fully realized pieces.
Okay,
So
so can you elaborate on that? Like, you're playing chords or playing melodies, or do you
I
remember?
was playing, I'll preface it by saying I've never played anybody else's music.
Right, sure.
Uh, Even during my classical studies, I would bastardize anybody that was any piece that was assigned to me and drove my professors crazy.
Yeah.
But I was already playing like this the first time I sat down at the piano.
So how did you proceed with the process of learning? Did anybody mentor you?
Um, I went through a few classical teachers who basically got rid of me after a couple of lessons
Okay.
because I was not a good student for them. Uh, I've never really followed orders, but I then found out through books and other things. Okay, oh, I can learn this. I can learn this. I can learn this. I can learn this. And because I was just so driven, well, let me preface that I was also living on the streets when I was 12. I don't know if you've heard that.
I wanted to get to that. That's actually my next question, and I hope it's okay to talk about this. It sounds like it is.
Absolutely.
You mentioned in that same article that you were living on the streets when you were 12, but that you felt very fortunate to be protected and mentored by some wonderful people along the way who kept you safe. I'd love to learn more about those years and how you ended up on the streets and what kinds of gigs you were playing and who helped you along the way and how you got to like Berkeley and USC.
Hopefully, this will not be too uncomfortable for you or your audience, but I'm a sexual abuse survivor. And that made me leave the home. So, but I was very fortunate that because by the time I was 12, I was also picking up gigs with different people. And so I was in San Francisco and I had been jumped like 4 or 5 years in school because I was also reading at the age of 3 and all of these other things. So I had this very fractured life. My father was a university professor, and part of me wanted to please him, even though these insane things were going on and he was oblivious. So I stayed in school. I went to USC for a couple of years, but I was already gigging. I was already playing with all these different people. And when I was on the streets in San Francisco and later on in Boston, when I went to Berkeley for a semester before I got thrown out of that place, uh,
I was going to ask you about
I,
that. Okay.
I was already playing with some giants, and the
Yeah.
people who were watching out for me on the streets. Many of them were they were Black Panthers. They were pretty radical people that, for them, they didn't see me as white or black or anything. They saw me as this really interesting guy who plays all this weird stuff, and yeah, let's see what we can do. And they kind of protected me. I always say when people say, God, you've had such a horrible life. I said, no, no, I've had a great life. All of those things led me to where I am now. So who I am and how my music is all been shaped by
Yeah.
these events.
Well, absolutely, which is why I want to cover all that. I'm sorry you went through that, but I also, your perspective is amazing and completely, I don't know, inspirational. Um, and yeah, so living on the streets, so you're like living in and out of shelters and stuff like that?
Uh, I never was in a shelter. Usually, what would happen is that if I couldn't find a friend who had an apartment or something like that, I would sleep on steps, or I would sleep in a group where there were people who were watching out.
Amazing.
And, 30 years ago, that's not the same thing as living on the streets today. The amount of violence and drug use and sexual exploitation is very different than what it was. So I have no idea what I would have done if I had to do this today, because I have actually mentored kids who have been on the streets, and far, far different experience.
Yeah. No, it's right. Thanks. Thank you for sharing all that. So I was going to ask, I'm a Berkeley alum myself, but I did not have your talent level when I entered. So how was Berkeley for you? I mean, that can be tough for unconventional learners and people who have had this rich life on the road. I mean, you're playing with Freddie Hubbard and Ernie Watts and Phil Woods. Was that all before Berkeley or during Berkeley?
No, that was after Berkeley. The best thing about Berkeley, because they hated me there, but I was meeting a lot of great
Right?
musicians.
Yeah.
And a whole lot at that time, like it was in many urban areas, there were a lot of clubs.
Yeah.
And so I could always find a gig, and I could also go and listen to people.
Yeah.
And that was a fantastic thing for me.
Yeah.
That was my education.
Yeah.
Berkeley was sort of my little penance for getting to do all of this other stuff. And the fact that I was playing gigs, and I'm like 13 years old at Berkeley, and
Wow.
and they're hating me, and no, you have to learn this, you have to learn this. No, no, I don't. No, I'm gonna just go play my stuff.
Yeah.
And that sort of is carried through my life. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the reasons that I drifted away from the jazz arena was that there's a rich history in jazz that sort of stopped at a certain place, where the evolution then turned to an homage to things that were going on in the past.
Yeah, definitely.
And that absolutely did not interest me. And in fact, most of the great players that I've played with either loved me because I wouldn't play like anybody else, or hated me because I wouldn't play like anybody
Right.
else. So it hardened my heart, but it also made me the warrior that I see that I am, because no matter what, that's how I am today. I don't care what anybody else is doing. I don't care what people think of me. I know that I have the ability to inspire and move people with my music, and those people find me. And the rest of it, it's a big world, right, Ben? I mean, it's infinite. There's room for everyone.
Yep. That's super interesting. And I read that you're playing with those guys like Freddie Hubbard. He was pretty influential to me in particular in my early 20s.
What did you play?
I was a piano major. I was an arranging major. I started as performance and arranging, and I actually played guitar too. But I ended up finishing with a commercial arranging degree. But jazz was new to me pretty much when I got to Berkeley, and listening to some of these fabulous players. When I was there, Dexter Gordon's Other Side of Round Midnight had just come out, and Freddie played on that album. Anyway, long story short, he moved me quite a bit. And through him, I found Dexter Gordon and other folks that grabbed me. But that was very much traditional jazz. And you're right, there was like this expansion, and then it sort of retracted. It didn't go forward. There is this commitment to, as you said, a homage to the past. That's pretty well said.
Yeah, yeah. Freddie, he would always say to me that I was the only white boy he'd ever played with at the time, and we had this great sort of love-hate relationship, because he would always accuse me of trying to make him play like somebody else. He says, the chords you use, this and that. I mean, you're trying to make me play different. I said, no, we're just playing, Freddie. And a lot of those people that I've worked with uh, were the reason that I kind of moved away from that area.
Yeah.
And not so coincidentally, the whole bout with tendonitis was sort of at the height of where my jazz chops and popularity were going. And so when I had to stop playing for over 10 years, that also really got me away from any preconception of what I was, who I was, my identity, where I was going to go.
You read my notes, Peter. So my next question was about your tendonitis. That in your early 20s, you encountered severe tendonitis, which kept you off tour for nearly 15 years, right?
It was pretty tough. Yeah.
Yeah. And you met Phil Cohen, founder of the Leonardo Project in Montreal, and he sent you on this unlearning journey. And would you be comfortable sharing what unlearning
Sure.
looked like to you?
So when I got tendonitis, now you've talked with many pianists, and I'm sure that I'm not the first one who said that they have had horrible wrist
For
problems.
sure. Yeah.
What I have learned about that is that if you have any virtuosity, any technique as a pianist, okay, you're moving these muscles quite rapidly. It's an athletic endeavor. Now, if you think about any other athletic endeavor, okay, the largest muscles of the body are the ones that are driving the next largest, the next largest. So you're starting at your back and your core, and you're moving outward from there. Okay, how are you taught piano? Not that way. You're taught fingers, and you take these little tiny muscles going through this horrific little channel where you've got over 50 ligaments and tendons in this really small area. So you're trying to move as fast as you can, and the tendons are going, ow, ow, ow. Okay, we got to build up some scar tissue. Oh, no, you can't do that anymore. So this is from the advent of the keyboard instrument, and before that, the advent of string instruments with guitars and lutes and Russian instruments like cymbalums and Chinese instruments like yanqing. It's all taught with fingers. So it was no wonder that at the kind of velocity that I was playing, I was going to blow up my hands, just like so many other people did. Uh, I was fortunate that I could play for maybe 2-3 minutes at a time, and it allowed me to do sessions for other people. A lot of, and that's when I started building my own electronics, and at a time where there weren't a lot of people doing that kind of thing. So I was able to pay the bills. Now I was miserable, but because of that, I hadn't. There's this concept that I know you understand, which is being grateful. Okay. I had no concept of being grateful. I was still back in, I'm on the streets. This has happened to me. This has happened to me. So I was kind of miserable, not realizing, like, hey, you're able to pay the bills. And the one thing I knew, I would play again. I don't know how, but I'm going to play again. So I was doing a session, and this musician came up to me and he said, look, you don't know who I am, but I'm a big fan of your music and I know what you're going through. There's a guy in town. He's in town for one more day and he helps people like you. And I think you should go see him. So at that point, I had tried every Western, every Eastern, every woo-woo. I had gone to acupuncturists, I'd gone to hand specialists. I went to doctors who would shake these weird instruments over my head and mumble incantations. I didn't care. I would try anything other than drugs because I'm vegan and straight edge. So I wouldn't go down that route. But everything else I would try. So I said, sure, I'll go see this guy. Why not? So at that time, Phil Cohen was traveling around the world and he would say, I don't teach, I do sessions. And I don't do anything other than help remove interferences. And I love that phrase because that's what it is about art. You know, you move the stuff that's in your way and then you get to the art. So I sat down and I played for my 2 minutes and it was very quiet. And he said, you're one of the great improvisers of the Western world, even at this stage, and I'll have you back playing in 6 months, but you have to unlearn everything that you know about the piano. So I was really messed up in terms of my psyche at that point. But I looked at this guy and I looked into his eyes and I said, okay, let's do it. So the first thing I had to do was to start learning martial arts. Now, I knew a little bit of it because on the streets, I had to kind of know how to protect myself. But that really started getting me into that and yoga because you start moving from your back and your core. And then he would have me do these insane things where I'd have to play cross-handed. I actually learned how to play certain things with my hands literally upside down in order to break any habits. There was never any exercises. He would say, make music, make music, make a piece out of one finger on each hand, make a piece out of two fingers cross-handed. And he would, he would stand behind me and he would tap and he would make sure that he wasn't feeling pressure from the back and he wouldn't feel pressure on this. When we first started, he says, now I'm going to play. And at a certain point, I want you to move my hand. So he's playing along. He was playing some kind of Chopin thing. And I went like this and his hand just flew off. And he was playing it in great velocity, but he had no tension through here. And he says, see, that's what we're going to get you. So it definitely took a lot longer than 6 months. And I was getting very frustrated because even though I'd gone from playing about 2 minutes a day to 6 minutes a day, which has tripled, after regressing for over 10 years, I should be happy. But no, and I stomped into the apartment that he was staying at. And I said, this is, and he says, okay, I want you to stop for a second. And he says, if you had to play a concert tomorrow, how would you do it? I said, well, I can't do this. He said, no, no, no. Close your eyes. Take a breath. See yourself playing a concert. How would you do it? So I closed my eyes. I said, well, I'd have to play very slowly and melodically and lyrically. And then I just started crying because, sorry, it always does this to me. There was this whole part of my life interacting with people, connecting with that emotion because of what had happened to me as a kid. And all of a sudden, it's like, yeah, I can do that. And then I just started learning a whole new way, not learning from him, but learning from the universe, whatever we want to call it, this way of looking at life and being grateful. My God, I was able to pay all these bills for 10 years, even though people didn't really like what I did, but they would hire me to play on these sessions. And I played on a lot of fabulous records. And I didn't have to go sell shoes or burgers or anything else. And so it was just this incredible awakening. And then slowly we worked it. We worked it. Velocity started coming back. But I always go back to that point.
That's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for allowing yourself to get personal.
Of
It's
course,
very touching. I
I
really
told you,
thank you.
nothing off limits.
Right. It's true. Some people say that though. I mean, but you went for it and I really appreciate it. And so you actually touched on something else that I wanted to talk more about. And that is that you started building hybrid acoustic and electric instruments in order to, you know, assist your creative process and music. So what was the catalyst for that? And how did you build these? And what exactly differentiated them from other instruments? What was it that made them a hybrid to you? All that kind of stuff.
I've always been interested in that sound that I couldn't quite find. If I play the piano, I'm always looking for that thing that I haven't found yet, that as I search, it slowly starts germinating. When I couldn't play for more than 2 minutes at a time, at that time, I was able to use mini cassettes and tape recorders. But just overdubbing a few things on piano didn't really do it for me. So because even when I was doing jazz, I was building a lot of electronics that I would hook up to electric pianos and acoustic pianos and modify the sound. And some people liked it and some people hated it, but I was starting to get no for it. Said, okay, what can I do with this and combine that? And then so I started building string instruments. So one of my first ones was I took a block of wood and then I got some guitar strings and some bass strings and uh, some harp strings, and I started putting them together with bridges. Then I hooked pickups to it. Then I started running it through all of this stuff and just kept searching for something that didn't exist. It's like trying to find that woman that, you see something out there and it's like, oh my God, she's so beautiful. Wait, don't go. And you keep searching. So I was doing a lot of that. And I think one of the reasons that the refractor piano came into existence was that there was a time when very few people worked with electronics and synths unless you were at a university. Now, not only does everybody do it, but there's 8 zillion virtual instruments. I'm leaving AI even out of the picture. The real demon. But we there's and everybody does this. You don't have to learn anything. You just hit some presets and you come up with something that you like, and then you make music with it. The moment somebody started catching up with me on any level is when I said, I'm not going to do that. I don't need to do that. I've done that. So I started building instruments with physical modeling stuff so that I could use a breath controller to imitate certain kinds of sounds, but they were my own sounds. Or I would take some of my Asian instruments and I would sample them. And then I would run them through different things. And then I would create new instruments that nobody else could do because nobody else had these instruments. And then I started working with this idea. The original one was called the PMOD or PM harmonizer, right?
Yeah.
Where I said, okay, I can take an acoustic piano and now start running that through stuff. And then I can use my other string instruments and I can use this and do this. And so it was this big kind of melange of many things.
Unwieldy, I think you put it.
It was great for a studio, but I couldn't go out and do it. And also at that time, already you had all of these people who were touring with racks of synths and all of that, and they'd behind there, and then you had pre-recorded tracks and all this. And I said, this isn't right. This isn't what I need to do. And then my friend Klaus, who's my brother from another mother, who's just he just does everything with me. I met him when I scored his first feature film. And interestingly enough, we're getting ready. I'm co-producing a second in a couple of months. But he started working with me and he said, what if all we saw and was the piano? And we shrunk this down to just this little rack of stuff. So there was obvious, you're doing this, you're doing it all live. You're not using pre-recorded tracks. You're not overdubbing. And that's when we started coming up with this, and he named it the Refractor Piano, just in case other people don't know what refraction is. In science, refraction is when a sound or light passes through a prism. Okay. So on one side, it is unaltered. Now it goes through the prism, and the prism morphs it in ways that quite often are unpredictable, interesting. You still have the original sound if you want to go here, and then you have all of this other stuff over here. So that's where the name Refractor Piano comes up, because that's exactly what it is. Because I'm playing an acoustic piano, you hear the acoustic piano, but then there's all this stuff that's being thrown back and that I get to interact with. And it's like having an infinite number of cantankerous me's who is never going to do what you think it's going to do. And now you have to react to it, and it's all live, and you're not trying to overdub, and it's just the most exciting thing.
It's so unique, and it is such an extension. I can tell. You've so led this whole interview. All my questions you're kind of answering in order. This has happened like only one other time in my career here doing this, but okay. So getting me excited here. So, how would you describe the sound? I know it's not any one thing, and I know that it's unpredictable, but can you describe its, and I'm off script. I'm way off script at this point, but could you
You're
describe,
supposed to be off script. You're
I'm,
talking to me. We're having a conversation.
yeah,
Screw
no,
the script.
no. Yeah. Usually it works, Peter. Usually it works well. Can you describe what is happening in the piano? I know you're talking about it's like it's going through a prism, but what actually is happening in the refractor piano?
Okay. So I want to get back to something you started to ask me, which is what it sounds like. And what I would say is go to my website, go listen to the pieces. Each piece is going to be different. Sometimes you might hear gongs, sometimes you might hear strings, sometimes you might hear voices, sometimes you're going to say, I have no idea what that is. And it all gets mixed together. So here's this acoustic piano. And now there are pickups or transducers that are mounted under the piano. Now that goes through a system of hardware and software that converts it from analog to digital, and then it goes through the software that I've developed. I have, if you look at the bottom of the piano, there's some pedals, and if you look at the top of the piano, there's a few sliders. And I use these to control, manipulate, and refract or morph what I'm hearing. So it's everything is live. So when I create a piece, it's not so much a piece, but it's a template. So I find the sounds that I want. I find out how I'm going to program those sounds so that as I play the piece, I'm able to change and morph in real time. So it's not just, you're not hearing just a loop.
Right. No, definitely. Yes.
And that's what's exciting about it, which is it's not quite like anything else. And that's me. I'm not quite like anybody else.
Yeah. And so, okay, one of my questions was too, you had the original P mod, and then you and Klaus sort of distilled it into the refractor piano. And is there anything that you got from the P mod that you weren't able to get from the refractor piano? Is there anything missing from that original vision?
Sure. Because the way we did the recordings for the PMOD, and interesting enough, the last album that I released, which is called Disturbances, had a lot of recordings from that period. So you're hearing me playing Breath Controller. It sounds like Freddie Hubbard has gone completely mad and jumped off of a cliff sometimes. You're hearing drums, but I'm not quite sure what those drums are because I'm playing all of these electronic patches that I developed myself and playing through a hand pad, and that's getting manipulated. So there was a lot of things in there that I can't do because I'm not using those instruments. It doesn't mean I won't ever go back to them. There are people now who can play some kind of electronic drums, and some people can do some kind of breath controller thing, and they can come up with sounds on synths, and they can mix all this stuff together. And people are doing that. Okay, I did that. Don't need to do that anymore. Many artists, including Stravinsky, said, how do you expand your consciousness? You limit, 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 limit. And when you've limited and dissected it down to a small little thing, take that and expand it. So that's what's exciting about this, which is knowing that I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. But listen to that. Now, what can I do with that?
Totally get that. And that almost goes back to your early unlearning journey as well, right? I mean, it's sort of a parallel in a way because you had to learn to create music with one finger or two fingers.
That's a great observation. And interestingly enough, all of that led me to the direction that this next album is going to be, because in many respects, it's the antithesis of the Refractor Piano or the PMod, because not only is it solo acoustic piano, but it's solo acoustic piano harkening back to that experience that I had with Phil Cohen, where I can play softly and lyrically, and I don't have to be pretentious and show that I can play faster than anybody else, but I can move people. And I'm sure I'm not the only person who would say the last couple of years has not been easy, you know, and the world at large, plus a few experiences of myself, drove me into this more introspective idea. And when I came up with this idea for the album, and Klaus came up with the name Excursions, and I said, okay, uh, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this, and we said, no, let's make it slow, soft, beautiful, but not like anybody else. How can you do that and keep your own identity? I never would have thought a couple of years ago that a solo piano, a simple solo piano video would get almost 500,000 views of my music, you know? I mean, I'm incredibly grateful. But after all you know, this is out there and this is not like anybody else and this and this and this. And then all of a sudden it's like, but I could just do this and this. Oh, you're responding to that. Here, let me just do a little bit more.
Yeah.
So, we don't know where it's going to come from, right, Ben? We don't know where that spark, that inspiration, and who's going to respond to it. We don't know. So I
Yeah.
don't worry about it.
It's wise. It's hard to do. You have to be very convinced in your own intentions and motivations, but that is really all you can do. And it's the most sane place to live. I
That's right.
totally get that.
That's right.
I like this quote that I read that you said, which is, I kept defaulting to the acoustic piano as a way to process grief and sadness. And I wanted to ask how the acoustic piano connection differs from the refractor piano connection when it comes to processing emotion. Is that something that you can even really answer?
I mentioned earlier that I live in the present. There's this wonderful quote by an author just passed named Louise Hay. She says, "The past is the past. It's over and done with. The future has not yet occurred. Live in the present, rejoice, because this is what we have." When I was immersed in the refractor piano, I felt like I could create any emotion that I wanted through that instrument. And in a sense, I still think I can. But somehow the events that were happening pushed me to the acoustic piano. So it's not so much that I can't do it on any other instrument,
Makes
or
sense.
I can't do it on an orchestra, or I can't
Yep.
do it on a garbage can. It's
Yep.
that's where I'm at right
Right
now.
now. Totally makes sense. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. You're just identifying really with the acoustic piano right now. I understand that. Totally get that. Now,
There's by the way, can I give you a quick story about somebody not me?
sure, of course. Yeah.
Okay. So the only classical pianist that I really paid attention to was Arthur Rubinstein. And he, to me, was like water. Like there was never any pounding. It was just this thing. Yeah, and he was just gracious and all that. So I saw an interview with him 2 months before he died. He was doing a concert in Israel. And somebody said, "So, Maestro, what do you like playing?" He goes, I love playing everything. Here, I play you some Rachmaninoff. It's like, "Bah." And, yeah, a few mistakes and all that. The guy's 96 years old and blind, but still amazing. He says, "So I do that. But there is this composer. His name is Schubert. I don't know if you know him. Many people think he's sort of not in vogue and not really important. But he writes these little pieces, leader, I play you something." So sits down, plays this just slow, beautiful, melodic thing. And this was a while ago that I saw this before I really understood what was going on with me. And I was just bawling like a baby because he took all of this stuff and then he said, I throw these away and now I do this.
Yeah.
And 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 that was the thing that with these pieces. And another way that a lot of these pieces came is that so many people that I knew were in hell. And I would say, "Here, let me play you something." And sometimes they were in different parts of the world. And I would just make stuff up. That's how I create everything. I would just close my eyes and get their energy, not to be too woo-woo, but that's what I do. And and then I'd play something. And then I'd actually sometimes get smart enough that I'd record it. And there was always these kinds of deceptively simple but quite profound mixture of evocative and melodic, depending on what that person was going through.
Very poignant.
And
Yeah.
and then it started connecting with me. Okay, if these people are being moved by this, you know, whatever we want to say, God, the universe, whatever we want to say, it's telling me something. Pay attention, you know, keep doing this. See how far you can take it.
Now, I know some of the singles, I could be wrong. I was a little confused by this. And so correct me if I'm wrong. So some of the singles for Excursions are out, but is the entire album out, or are you releasing a single
No.
at a time? Or
Yeah. So I am so fortunate and blessed to have a fantastic agent, Krishona and Morame, who obviously you've connected with. I have a wonderful social media woman, Lucy LaForge at Make a Splash, and they believe in me. And as opposed to the other 8 zillion agents, I've always had this thing. Wow, this stuff is incredible. You're a genius, but we don't know what to do with it. It doesn't fit in our algorithm. You'll be famous after you're dead. And they said, this is fantastic. You're a genius. We don't know what we're going to do with it, but we're going to make it happen. And they did. And so I never pick the music. In fact, most of the time, I don't even title my pieces. Klaus tends to title the stuff. He listens to something, then he comes up with a title. Krishona and Lucy and Klaus figure out which pieces are going to work. And then once we choose the piece, then Klaus comes up with the video. So we've released 2 of them so far. The plan right now is we're doing it in a series of videos with the music. It seems to be connecting. And we're hoping to release the whole album in the fall. And it'll probably be between either 6 or 8 cuts. But people are reacting both to the music and the videos in a very positive way, which is building awareness for the album. So that's the plan.
I do want to bring people back to your website. I want to lead them to your website because there are a lot of ways to experience your music. When I was streaming it on Spotify, and then I went to your website and watched the video interaction, even with Refractor Piano, it was such a different experience. Like, I can imagine how cool it is to see you playing live, because the extra visual stimulation that I saw was, it really lifts you to a whole new part of the journey. I think the video I really enjoyed the most is Iron Road. Do I have that right? Was that?
Yeah, the Iron Road.
Remarkable. And so I encourage listeners, I encourage you to go to Peter's website, which is
ManningRobinson.com.
That's what it is, petermanningrobinson.com. And check out all the videos. He's got his newest videos that have just been released, the singles that will be part of the Excursions album, but also his Refractor Piano videos. And it's really, I promise, it's unlike anything you've ever seen. And it's really intriguing. And that's not even the right word. It's a great experience. And it's not like just putting on music and listening. And so, Peter, I want to thank you for that because it's pretty cool. It's really pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, we wish we could do more of those, but the visual artist that Klaus worked with, Hannah Kim, she's now in New York and getting very famous doing opera.
I have a couple questions left to ask. One is there anything that you would like to cover that I haven't covered already?
I would just say, I would reiterate what you just said. Go to my website. Go check out the videos. You can listen to the music. You can hear about me. Contact me. You know, I'm very approachable. I do my best to answer anything. Let me know what you think of my music. What do you think about my vegan stuff? What do you think about my journey? You know, if you had similar experiences, you think I'm out of my mind. I'm good for all of that stuff.
So I have one last question I must ask, and that is that I read that you discovered certain foods vibrate at different frequencies. And I just wanted to say, how did you discover that? And what do you do with that knowledge?
All right. So for me, plants vibrate at a higher frequency for me. Okay. I don't, because I'm vegan, I don't eat meat, don't have dairy. I know how I feel, and I've been doing this for a while. So I've gotten very good at knowing, depending on what's going on with me, what kind of protein I need to get into my body. What kind am I working on a raw regimen? Am I mixing things? Am I steaming things? And that's what I mean. I know there's also a lot of scientific things where people hook up electrodes to plants and all this, and they measure stuff and all that. I'm not really dealing with that on that level. I just know that I go in and I get my checkups, and the doctor says, "What the heck are you doing? You've got like the constitution of an 18-year-old. You've got no inflammation. You've got no this, no this, and that." I said, "Yeah, well, I'm vegan and I'm straight edge." And they always go, "Oh, you're one of those." Well, I could never do that, but it works for me.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's actually one of the very cool things I've read about you at several different interviews, is that you're like, hey, this works for me. You're not trying to project it onto anybody. You are you. And I really enjoy that aspect of you not being, I don't know, trying to change everybody into you. You're very,
I'm not the vegan police, is what I call them, Ben.
Okay.
People ask me what I do. Some people like it, some people don't.
Yeah, sure. And that's really how it is for all of us. But I think most people get caught up in whether they are liked or not, which leads me to how can people find out more about you? Yes, petermanningrobinson.com, but Facebook, Instagram,
Instagram is the one anything that I post on Instagram gets ported over to Facebook, but I'm rarely on that platform. If you go to Instagram, you'll get me on a daily basis. And you can always shoot me a message either through email or DM me. I'll do my best to answer. And there's a lot of ways to find out about me.
Yeah. So do they find you on Instagram or Facebook at just Peter Manning Robinson?
Yeah, just go to Peter Manning Robinson and there.
Okay. Well, perfect. I encourage everybody to visit and check out your music and just experience something new, because that is definitely new and I think it's super cool. And you're very eclectic. So it's, if you, like you said earlier, if you don't like one song, that's not the totality of Peter Manning Robinson. Check out another song, check out another piece.
It's not up to me as to what somebody likes.
Yeah, for sure.
That's why when you say, well, can you describe this or describe that? No, you could describe something and somebody else could describe it. I just create. That's what I do.
It was so different though. The funny thing is when I was listening to you on Spotify or Apple Music, I forget which, and I was saying, I was describing the music to myself. Like, well, how would I describe this to listeners? And the combination that came up was Ravel meets Chick Corea meets classical Indian music. And especially thinking of like bolero. And but then when I saw you, like, nah, it's like not classifiable. And so it really was such a completely different experience, bringing in, I don't know, video and then being completely improvisational. I would have to throw that category out. But the funny thing was that I did try to describe you when I was first listening to your music. And with that was audio only, no outside influence. But I think that's not a safe characterization of
I
you.
want to say, Ben, I'm so appreciative that you actually looked into all these different rooms that I inhabited, different
Yeah, sure.
planets, because quite often when I'm interviewed, they're going off of a very rigid script. They haven't actually checked out what I'm doing, and you are quite versed in the Peter Manning Robinson craziness, and I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, hey, it's my privilege. I'm so thankful for the opportunity. I'm truly heartfelt thanks to you for joining me. I'm grateful for the opportunity. It's so fun for me to learn about people and to learn about your journey. And there was just so much depth and like what you overcame. And it's like, wow, there's a lot to talk about and a lot of interesting things. And I also was just so impressed as I was learning more just how gracious you are. And that is a draw for me too, So thank you. I appreciate it. It's the least I
My
can do
pleasure.
is to be well versed in what you're doing. I don't do that many episodes because I want to be well versed in the people I interview. So anyway, thank you.
All right. Well, we will do it again as soon as the other stuff starts coming out.
All right. That sounds good. All right. Thank you, Peter. Many heartfelt
Thanks so
thanks
much.
again. Yeah, my
Thank you so
pleasure.
much, Ben. All right. Namaste. See you soon.
Bye bye. And listeners, many thanks to you too for taking the time to listen. I so appreciate you. And of course, I greatly appreciate Classic Pianos, who makes all these episodes possible. So until then, until the next episode, take care. Peace be with you.
Peace be with you.